Just for today, please, be my dad. 5 words, whispered by a 5-year-old girl with blonde curls and butterfly sneakers, shaking, crying, grabbing the scarred hands of a patched Hell's Angel at a gas station in the middle of the desert. A man no mother would let near her children. A man cops watched in their mirrors. A man who hadn't felt anything in 24 years. Behind her, the store door swung open. A clean-cut man in a polo shirt walked out, calm, smiling, scanning the parking lot like a hunter tracking prey. His phone held one message. Blonde, 5-year-old, confirming delivery for 9 p.m. She chose the monster to save her from the devil, and the monster said yes. Before we begin, if stories like this move you, subscribe to this channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story travels. Now, let me tell you about Garrett Iron Mercer and the day a little girl turned a Hell's Angel into something the world never expected. Garrett Mercer hadn't cried since he was 11 years old. That was the year his father left a note on the kitchen table that said, "Can't do this anymore," and walked out of a house he never came back to. Garrett read that note 14 times before his mother came home from her shift at the hospital. He didn't cry then. He didn't cry at his mother's funeral 8 years later. He didn't cry when he took his first beating as a prospect for the Hells Angels, or when he watched his best friend bleed out on a barroom floor in Tucson. Crying was a door he'd sealed shut so long ago he'd forgotten it existed. At 46, Garrett Iron Mercer was a man built entirely out of scar tissue, inside and out. 24 years, patched. Chapter Enforcer. His hands were mapped with old wounds, knuckles flattened from decades of conversations that ended with his fists. He had no wife, no children, no family left alive that would claim him. He was the kind of man people moved away from in gas station lines, the kind cops watched in their side mirrors, the kind mothers instinctively pulled their children closer to when he walked past. And that was fine. That was the deal. You trade softness for survival, and you don't look back. He was filling his Harley Road King at a Texaco off Interstate 40, somewhere between Kingman and Needles, mile marker 112. 6 hours on the road from Flagstaff. His back screamed. His throat was dry. His mind was doing what it always did on long rides. Absolutely nothing. Just the hum of the engine cooling down, the smell of gasoline on his hands, and the next empty mile of highway waiting for him. Then he heard the scream. Not a tantrum, not a kid who dropped her ice cream. This was something else entirely. This was a sound that came from a place below language, below thought. A raw, primal shriek that said one thing and one thing only. I am in danger, and no one is helping me. 24 years in the Hells Angels had taught Garrett things no classroom ever could. How to read a room in 2 seconds flat. How to tell the difference between a drunk throwing chairs and a man reaching for a weapon. How to know, in his bones, before his brain caught up, when something was real. This was real. The convenience store door flew open so hard it cracked against the outside wall. A little girl came through it like she'd been launched. Blonde curls flying, pink t-shirt 3 sizes too big, hanging off one shoulder. Butterfly sneakers, both untied, slapping the concrete. She was tiny, she was terrified, and she was running. But here's the thing that would stay with Garrett for the rest of his life. She didn't run toward the woman loading groceries into the SUV at Pump 4. She didn't run toward the trucker checking his tires. She didn't run back inside to the cashier behind the counter. She ran straight at him. The biggest, scariest, most leather-covered, tattoo-marked man in the entire parking lot. And this 5-year-old child ran to him like he was the safest place in the world. Her hands grabbed his right hand. Both of her hands together couldn't wrap around 3 of his fingers. But she squeezed with everything her tiny body had. She squeezed like letting go meant falling off the edge of the earth. She looked up at him, blue eyes, wide open, wet, carrying something so heavy, so wrong, so far beyond what any 5-year-old should ever have to carry, that Garrett felt his chest tighten in a way it hadn't tightened in decades. "Just for today," she whispered. Her voice was shaking. Her whole body was shaking. "Please, be my dad." Garrett stopped breathing. In 46 years on this earth, no one, not one single human being, had ever asked him to be anything close to a father. He was the man people warned their children about. He was the thing in the parking lot you told your kids not to look at. He was the reason mothers held hands tighter. And this child chose him. Something shifted inside his chest. Not broke, not cracked, shifted. Like a door sealed shut for 35 years had just moved a quarter of an inch. He looked down at her. He wrapped his scarred, gasoline-stained hand around her tiny fingers. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice came out different. Not the growl he used in bars. Not the flat, dead tone he used when someone owed the club money. Something softer. Something he genuinely did not recognize as his own voice. "Stay behind me and don't let go." She pressed herself against the back of his legs. He could feel her heartbeat through his jeans. Fast. Hummingbird fast, like a trapped bird beating against a window. The store door opened again. A man walked out. Mid-30s, brown hair combed neatly to one side. Polo shirt, blue, clean, pressed. Khaki pants, clean shoes. He looked like he coached Little League on Saturdays. He looked like the guy who brings potato salad to the church picnic. He looked like every face you'd scroll past on a Neighborhood Watch Facebook page without a second thought. But his eyes were wrong. Garrett saw it immediately. 24 years of reading men in rooms where reading them wrong meant you bled had given him a sixth sense for predators. And this man, this clean-cut, polo shirt-wearing, neighborhood-friendly-looking man, was a predator. He didn't scan the parking lot the way a panicked parent would. No frantic spinning, no shouting. He scanned it grid by grid, pump by pump, methodical, patient, like a hunter tracking a rabbit that had bolted from a snare. His eyes found Garrett, found the child pressed against Garrett's legs. Something cold moved behind his face. Just a flash, half a second, before it vanished behind a mask so smooth, so practiced, it would have fooled almost anyone. Almost. "Lily!" The man's voice cracked with perfectly rehearsed relief. He even put his hand over his heart. "Oh, sweetheart, you scared me half to death running off like that." He took 2 steps forward, arms opening wide. "Come on, baby girl, let's get back in the car. Mommy's waiting at the hospital, remember?" Garrett felt Lily press harder against his legs. Her fingernails dug into his hand. "He's not my daddy." Her whisper was fast, urgent, a child who knew she had seconds to tell the truth. "He said my mommy was in an accident. He said he was taking me to the hospital, but he locked the car doors. He drove the wrong way. I couldn't open them. I tried. I kicked and kicked. He told me to be quiet. He said if I screamed, my mommy would get hurt worse." She swallowed hard. "I got out when he went inside to pay for gas. The lock. The child lock. I figured it out from the inside. I pulled the handle and pushed real hard. 5 years old, locked in a stranger's car, driving away from everything she knew, and she figured out the child lock. She got herself out." Garrett's blood went cold, then hot, then past any temperature that had a name. He looked at this man, this ordinary, unthreatening, neighborhood-safe-looking man, and he saw him with perfect clarity. The neat hair, the pressed shirt, the rehearsed worry, the arms held open in a pose he'd probably practiced in a mirror. Every detail designed to make people trust him. Every detail a lie. "Sir," the man said, and his voice was so reasonable, so calm, it was almost impressive. "I understand this looks concerning. I'm her uncle. Her mother, my sister, was in a car accident this morning. Karen asked me to pick Lily up from daycare and bring her to Barstow General. She's confused." She's scared. Kids this age, they get overwhelmed and... What's her birthday? Garrett said. The man blinked. I'm sorry? Her birthday. You're her uncle. What's her birthday? A pause. One beat too long. March 15th. Garrett looked down at Lily. She shook her head. Barely, but enough. Wrong, Garrett said. Try again. What's her middle name? The man's smile twitched, just at the corners. Look, I don't think... Middle name. I really don't appreciate... What school does she go to? Silence. What's her teacher's name? Nothing. What did she have for breakfast this morning? The man's mask was crumbling. Garrett watched it happen in real time. The friendly uncle melting away, revealing something underneath that was cold and hard and calculating. His eyes changed. That warm, concerned look drained out of them like water through a crack. You need to give me that child, the man said. His voice dropped an octave. No more rehearsed warmth. You don't know what you're getting into. I know exactly what I'm getting into. Garrett pulled his phone from his cut with his left hand. His right hand never let go of Lily's. You can prove who you are to the police. The word police changed everything. The mask didn't just crack, it shattered. The man's jaw tightened. His shoulders squared. His hands, which had been open and welcoming 5 seconds ago, curled into fists at his sides. Put the phone down, he said, low, controlled, the voice of a man who was used to being obeyed. Put it down and walk away. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me. You're making a mistake, a very big mistake. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm dealing with a man who can't tell me a 5-year-old's birthday. The man lunged. Not at Garrett, at Lily. His hand shot out, fast, practiced, aimed directly at the child's arm. He'd done this before. The motion was too smooth, too precise, too automatic. This wasn't desperation. This was muscle memory. But he'd never tried it on a patched Hell's Angel. Garrett's left hand caught the man's wrist in midair. His grip closed like a vice. He grabbed a fistful of polo shirt with his free hand, spun the man 180 degrees, and drove him face first into the gas pump. Metal rang against bone. The man grunted. His knees buckled. Garrett pinned him there. One hand on the back of his neck, one hand twisting his arm up between his shoulder blades. The man's cheek was pressed flat against the pump's metal housing. His nose was bleeding. His eyes were wide, not with pain, but with the sudden realization that he was completely and entirely out of his depth. Lily, Garrett said. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice a father uses when he's telling his daughter the thunder can't hurt her. It's okay. He can't touch you. He can't reach you. You're safe. I'm scared, mister. Garrett, my name is Garrett, and I know you're scared. You have every right to be scared, but nothing is going to happen to you. I promise. He said, I promise, and meant it with every cell in his body. He couldn't remember the last time he'd promised anyone anything. The man under his hands tried to twist free. Garrett added pressure. The man stopped. You're dead, the man hissed. You don't know what you've done. You don't know who I work for. I don't care who you work for. You will care when they find out. Something fell from the man's pocket, a phone. It hit the concrete face up. The screen lit on impact, bright, clear, visible. An encrypted messaging app was open. A notification bar at the top read, Package acquired, ETA to drop point. Below that, a message thread. Garrett read the last message in the time it took his heart to beat twice. Blonde, 5-year-old, matches buyer request. Confirming delivery for 9 p.m. The screen locked. Garrett's vision went tunnel narrow, his hearing muffled. The desert, the highway, the gas station, all of it collapsed to a single point. Package, buyer request, delivery, confirming. They were talking about this child the way a warehouse talks about cargo. The way a shipping company talks about a box on a truck. Blonde, 5-year-old, matches buyer request. Like a product listing, like an order being fulfilled. Garrett had seen darkness in his life. He'd been part of it. He'd done things that would keep a priest busy for a month. But this was a different species of evil. This was so far beyond anything he'd ever encountered that for a moment, just a moment, his brain refused to process it. Then the moment passed. And what replaced it was something Garrett hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Purpose. He leaned close to the man's ear. You're going to lie there. You're going to breathe through your nose, and you're not going to move a single muscle until people with badges arrive. Nod if you understand. The man didn't nod. He laughed. A short, ugly sound. She's worth $40,000. You think one biker at a gas station is going to stop this? You think you matter? Garrett pressed harder. The man's laugh turned into a wheeze. I don't need to stop all of it, Garrett said quietly. I just need to stop you. He looked at Lily. She was standing 6 feet away, hugging herself, watching with those enormous blue eyes. Lily, sweetheart, I need you to do something brave for me. Can you tell me your full name? Lily Grace Dawson. Good girl. Your mama's name? Karen Dawson. Does your mama have a phone number you know? Lily nodded. And then, this 5-year-old child, standing in a gas station parking lot in 108-degree heat, shaking from head to toe, having just escaped a locked car driven by a man who intended to sell her, recited her mother's phone number. 10 digits. Perfect. Without a single hesitation. Garrett dialed the number with his free hand, keeping the man pinned with the other. It rang once, twice, 3 times. A woman answered. Her voice was wrecked, hoarse, the voice of someone who had been screaming and crying and calling every number she could think of for hours. Hello? Who is this? Do you know something about my daughter? Please, if you know anything. Mrs. Dawson, my name is Garrett Mercer. Your daughter Lily is safe. She's standing right next to me. She's not hurt. The sound Karen Dawson made would haunt Garrett for the rest of his natural life. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a sob. It was something that doesn't have a word, a gasp and a prayer and a cry of relief, compressed into a single syllable that cracked through the phone speaker like broken glass. She's safe? She's really? Oh God, oh God, oh God. Lily, baby, are you there? Can she hear me? Garrett held the phone down to Lily. It's your mama. Lily grabbed the phone with both hands. Mommy, I was so scared. A man said you were hurt and he was taking me to you, but he wasn't, Mommy. He was going the wrong way, and I got out, and I found a man, and his name is Garrett, and he's helping me, Mommy. He's keeping me safe. Karen Dawson was crying so hard the words coming through the speaker were barely language. Baby, I'm coming. Mommy's coming right now. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming. Garrett took the phone back. Mrs. Dawson, listen to me. I need you to call the state police. Not local, state. Ask for Detective Sarah Lockhart out of Barstow. Tell her what happened. Tell her Texaco, I-40, mile marker 112. Tell her to bring everything she's got. The police told me to wait 24 hours. They said she probably wandered off. They said, forget what they said. Call Lockhart, state police. Can you do that? Yes, I'm calling. I'm driving. Drive safe, Mrs. Dawson. Your daughter needs you to get here in one piece. He hung up, looked down at the man bleeding quietly against the gas pump, looked at the phone on the ground with its locked screen and its monstrous messages, looked at Lily, who was standing perfectly still, arms wrapped around herself, waiting. He pulled out his phone again and dialed the one number he'd been calling for 23 years. Grizz, it's Iron. Marcus Grizz Ballard, 6'5", shaved head, red beard to his chest, sergeant at arms, picked up on the first ring. He always did when Garrett called. That's what brothers did. What do you need? I need the crew at the Texaco on I-40, mile marker 112. Right now, every single one of them. What's the situation? I've got a child snatcher pinned to a gas pump. His phone says he's part of a network. There's a delivery scheduled tonight at 9. Buyers, sellers, and at least 3 more kids. The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds. Garrett counted. In 23 years, he had never heard Grizz go silent for more than 2. When Grizz spoke again, his voice was lower, harder, stripped of everything except the bedrock underneath. We're 20 minutes out. Don't let him breathe. Garrett hung up. He looked at Lily. She had sat down on the curb, her butterfly sneakers touching the hot asphalt, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up at him with those blue eyes that had seen too much today. Mr. Garrett? Yeah, kid. Are more people coming? Good people? Garrett looked at the horizon. Somewhere out there, 20 minutes away, 7 Harley-Davidsons were firing up. 7 men who'd broken more laws than a courthouse could count were about to ride flat out across the desert. Not for money, not for territory, not for reputation. For her. Yeah, Lily, he said. Good people are coming. She nodded, accepted it completely. The way only a child can accept a promise from someone they've decided to trust. The man against the gas pump groaned, shifted, tested Garrett's grip. Garrett held firm. The desert stretched in every direction. The sun beat down. The highway shimmered. And somewhere in the distance, faint at first, then growing, then unmistakable, the sound of engines. 7 Harleys came screaming off the highway like thunder rolling across a flat desert. Garrett heard them before he saw them. That deep, guttural roar that shook the air and made the cashier inside the convenience store press her face against the window. They pulled into the Texaco in a V formation. 7 machines, 7 men. Grizz at the front, 6'5", shaved head catching the sun, red beard braided to his chest. Behind him, Pixel, thin and wire-framed, the club's tech ghost. Deacon, broad-shouldered, dead-eyed calm. Forge, ex-Marine, jaw set like concrete. Rattler, the youngest at 27, scar running from his jaw to his ear. Preacher, the oldest, 65, white beard, riding like a man who'd been on the back of a Harley since before most of them were born. And Ace, bringing up the rear, already scanning every car in the lot. They killed their engines at the same time. The silence that followed hit harder than the noise. Grizz swung off his bike, walked straight to Garrett, looked down at the man pinned against the gas pump, then looked at Lily sitting on the curb. That the kid? That's her. Grizz crouched down in front of Lily. This massive, terrifying man lowered himself to her eye level and spoke softer than Garrett had ever heard him speak. Hey there, little one. My name's Grizz. I'm Garrett's brother. You're safe now, okay? Nobody's going to hurt you. Lily studied his face for 3 full seconds. Then she said, You have a really big beard. Grizz almost smiled. Almost. Yeah, I get that a lot. He stood up, turned to Garrett, and his face went back to stone. Show me the phone. Garrett pointed. Pixel was already on it. He picked up the cracked device from the concrete, pulled a cord from his jacket, and connected it to a small tablet he carried everywhere. His fingers moved fast, fast enough that the other brothers had stopped asking him what he was doing years ago and just let him work. 3 minutes, that's all Pixel needed. He looked up. The blood had drained from his face. This isn't one guy, Pixel said. His voice was quiet the way it always was, but there was something underneath it now, something shaken. This is a network. I'm seeing at least 18 children referenced in the last 4 months. Different ages, different states. There are pickup coordinates, drop points, buyer codes, encrypted relay messages. He stopped, swallowed. And there's a meeting tonight, 9 p.m., An abandoned auto shop off Old Route 66 near Amboy. Sellers, buyers, and 3 children scheduled for exchange. Nobody spoke. 18 children, 4 months. Garrett let that number sit in his chest. 18 families destroyed. 18 kids ripped out of their lives. And tonight, 3 more were sitting in some dark room, waiting to be sold like furniture. Rattler broke the silence. 3 kids? Tonight? Tonight, Pixel confirmed. 9 p.m. That gives us roughly 4 hours. Garrett looked at the man pinned to the pump. Brett Nolan. That was the name Pixel had pulled from the phone's data. Brett Nolan, 34, no criminal record, a ghost in every database. The perfect collector. Invisible, unremarkable, forgettable. Garrett grabbed Nolan's hair and pulled his head up. Talk! Nolan's nose was still bleeding. His eyes were calculating. Even now, even pinned and surrounded by 7 Hell's Angels, his brain was running numbers. You don't know what you're into. This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of you. Then it should be easy to explain. Nolan laughed, a wet, bloody sound. You want to play hero? Fine. Here's what happens. I have a check-in protocol. Every 20 minutes I send a coded phrase to my handler. If I miss 1 check-in, he knows something's wrong. If I miss 2, the whole operation evacuates. The kids get moved. New location, new transport, new identities. You'll never find them. Nobody will. Garrett looked at Pixel. Pixel nodded. He's telling the truth. There's a timed message thread. Last check-in was 16 minutes ago. 4 minutes. They had 4 minutes before Nolan's handler expected the next coded message. What's the phrase? Garrett said. Nolan grinned through the blood. It's biometric locked, fingerprint and a 6-digit code. You'd need both to even open the app. Garrett didn't hesitate. He grabbed Nolan's right hand, forced his thumb onto the phone scanner. The app opened. Pixel leaned in, read the message pattern, studied the previous check-ins, timestamps, phrasing, rhythm. I can mimic this, Pixel said. Same cadence, same abbreviations, but I need to send it now. Do it. Pixel typed, hit send. The room held its breath, all of them standing in a gas station parking lot in the middle of the desert, waiting for a response from a child trafficker's encrypted messaging app. 10 seconds, 20, 30, the phone buzzed. 1 word, confirmed. Garrett exhaled. They'd bought themselves time. 90 minutes before the next check-in. Grizz pulled Garrett aside. So what's the plan? We ride to this warehouse, we pull these kids out, and then what? We go to war with a network we can't see? That's the problem, Garrett said. We can save 3 kids tonight, maybe. But if we hit that warehouse without anything behind it, the people above Nolan scatter. They rebuild. Different city, different collectors, different drop points. 6 months from now, another kid gets snatched from another gas station. The machine doesn't stop. So what are you saying? Garrett looked Grizz dead in the eye. We need a cop. Grizz stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. You want to repeat that? We need law enforcement, real law enforcement, someone with warrants, with jurisdiction, with the power to take this whole thing down from the top. Brother, I have been arrested 6 times. Forge has been arrested 9. Preacher did 4 years in Chino. You're asking us to hand our necks to the same people who've been trying to put us away for 20 years. I'm asking you to think about those 3 kids. That landed. Grizz's jaw worked. His eyes went to Lily on the curb, then back to Garrett. He didn't say anything for a long time. Who? He finally said. Detective Sarah Lockhart, State Police Special Crimes Unit out of Barstow. She's been chasing trafficking corridors through this area for 4 years. She's clean. She's good at what she does. And she's the only one I'd trust not to blow this. How do you know she won't just arrest all of us the second she pulls in? I don't. Another silence. Grizz ran his hand over his beard, looked at the sky, looked at the desert, looked at Garrett with an expression that said, I've followed you into a lot of bad ideas, brother, but this one might be the worst. Make the call, Grizz said. Garrett dialed. It rang 4 times before a sharp, clipped voice answered. Lockhart. Detective, my name is Garrett Mercer. I'm a patched member of the Hells Angels. Before you hang up, I have a child trafficker restrained at a gas station off I-40, mile marker 112. His phone contains evidence of an organized network operating across the Arizona-California border. There are 3 children scheduled to be sold tonight at 9 p.m. at an abandoned auto shop near Amboy. I can hand you the whole thing. The collector, the communications, the location, and the broker running the operation. 4 seconds of silence. Why are you calling me? Lockhart's voice was careful, controlled, not skeptical exactly, more like a woman who'd been lied to by professionals and wasn't about to fall for an amateur. Because you've been working this corridor for 4 years, and you're the best chance those kids have. And what do you want in return? Nothing. Nobody calls offering nothing. I'm not nobody. I'm a man standing in a parking lot with a 5-year-old girl who just escaped a locked car. And I'm telling you there are 3 more children who won't escape unless somebody does something in the next 4 hours. Lockhart fired questions, rapid, precise, the kind that tested for lies. What's on the phone? How did you get it? Who's the collector? What evidence do you have that this is real? Garrett answered every single one without flinching. Finally, if this is real, I'm in. If it's not, I'm arresting every last one of you. Stay where you are. She hung up. Garrett looked at Grizz. She's in? Grizz asked. She's in, and she'll arrest us all if we're lying. We're not lying. No, we're not. 50 minutes passed. Pixel sent another successful check-in. Nolan sat handcuffed to a bike rack, saying nothing, bleeding slowly. The brothers took positions around the lot, not because anyone told them to, but because that's what they did. They covered angles. They watched the road. They waited. Then a white Honda Civic screamed off the highway doing 80, brakes screeching as it fishtailed into the parking lot. The driver's door flew open before the engine died. Karen Dawson. She was out of the car and running, light brown hair flying behind her, face wrecked with tears. Still in her work uniform, a diner apron she hadn't even thought to take off. Her hands were outstretched before she'd covered half the distance. Lily saw her mother and the whole world stopped. Mommy! She let go of Garrett's hand, the first time since she grabbed it, and ran. Full speed, arms open, every ounce of terror and bravery and 5-year-old strength pouring out of her legs. Karen dropped to her knees on the concrete. She didn't care about the asphalt tearing into her skin. She caught her daughter like she was catching something fragile falling from a great height, and she pulled her in so tight it looked like she was trying to fold the child back inside her own body, back where it was safe, back where nobody could ever touch her. Baby, 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 oh my God, baby, you're here. You're okay, you're here. Mommy, I was so brave. Mr. Garrett told me to stay behind him and I did. I was so brave, Mommy. You were so brave. You were the bravest girl in the whole world. Mommy's here. Mommy's never letting go. Garrett turned away. He couldn't watch. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because it was. Because it was the most real, most raw, most human thing he'd ever witnessed. And it was something so far outside his own life, so completely foreign to anything he'd ever experienced, that looking at it felt like staring into the sun. He walked to his Harley and put both hands on the seat and just breathed. A small hand tugged at his. He looked down. Lily had broken away from her mother, just for a moment, and come back to him. Her face was wet with tears and her mother's tears, and she was smiling through all of it. Bye, Mr. Garrett. Thank you for being my pretend dad. That crack in his chest, the one that had started at, just for today, be my dad, ripped wider. He felt something behind his eyes that he hadn't felt since he was 11 years old, standing in a kitchen, reading a note. You weren't pretend, kid. he said. His voice broke on the last word. He didn't try to fix it. You were the real thing. Karen Dawson stood behind her daughter, holding her shoulders, looking at Garrett with an expression that contained more gratitude than language could carry. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know how to. You don't have to. He would have, but he didn't. She's here. You're here. That's what matters. Karen nodded, tears streaming. She picked Lily up, carried her to the car, buckled her in. Lily waved from the window, a 5-year-old wave, whole hand, wide open, fingers spread. The kind of wave that says goodbye and thank you, and I'll remember you, all at the same time. They drove away. Garrett watched the car until it became a dot on the highway, and then nothing. Then Pixel said, "We have a problem." The broker, the one running tonight's operation, had just sent a new message. He wanted a photo of the package, proof that the delivery was on schedule and the merchandise matched the buyer's specifications. No photo, no meeting. And if there was no meeting, the 3 children at the warehouse would vanish within the hour. Can you stall? Garrett asked. Pixel was already typing. He crafted a response. Car accident on the highway, phone screen cracked, camera isn't working, highway patrol on scene, need to detour. He sent it using Nolan's patterns, Nolan's abbreviations, Nolan's rhythm. The reply came in 40 seconds. 1 hour, not a minute more. Photo or we evacuate. 1 hour, 60 minutes. The clock had just become a guillotine. Garrett gathered every brother in a circle. The warehouse is 32 miles from here. Old Route 66 near Amboy. We ride fast, we get there in 30 minutes. That gives us 30 minutes inside before this whole thing collapses. Lockhart's team is mobilizing, but she told me she needs 20 minutes after we arrive to get tactical in position. So here's what we're doing. 3 of us go in. Buyers. We walk in, we ask to see the product, we stall. We keep everyone calm and in one place for 20 minutes until Lockhart breaches. Walk into a trafficking warehouse, Grizz said, unarmed, pretending to be child buyers. Yes. Pretending to be the thing I'd kill a man for being. Yes. Grizz looked at the sky, looked at the ground, looked at Garrett. I hate this plan. I know. I'm in. Every brother said the same 2 words. Deacon, we go. Forge, we go. Rattler, Preacher, Ace, Pixel, every single one. Then the broker moved the timeline up. A new message buzzed on the phone. Buyers wanted an early preview. Something about schedules, about a flight to catch. The meeting wasn't at 9 anymore. It was at 8:15. They just lost 45 minutes. Pixel's face went white. Lockhart's team won't be ready. She said she needs at minimum. Call her, Garrett said. Tell her the timetable moved. Tell her we're going in regardless. Grizz grabbed his arm. Brother, you're talking about walking into a building full of armed traffickers with no weapons, no backup, and no exit strategy. I'm talking about 3 children sitting in a warehouse right now who are going to disappear in 90 minutes if nobody walks through that door. Grizz held his arm for a long moment. Then he let go. Garrett called Lockhart. She cursed, fluently, creatively, in a way that would have impressed even Preacher. I have 4 officers in position and 2 more incoming. I need 20 minutes after you arrive. You'll get them. How? We'll hold it together inside. 20 minutes. Just get there. Mercer, if this goes sideways, then you arrest whoever's left standing. He hung up, looked at his brothers. Grizz and Deacon, you're with me inside. Forge, Rattler, you cover the exits from outside. Pixel, you run comms from the road. Preacher, Ace, you're our emergency. If we're not out in 30 minutes, you come in hard. Preacher, 65 years old, white-bearded, hands steady as granite, nodded once. If I come in, son, I'm not coming in quiet. I know. They mounted up. 7 engines fired in sequence, one after another, building into a wall of sound that rolled across the empty desert. Garrett led them onto the highway. The speedometer climbed past 80, past 90. The wind hit his face like a fist. Behind him, his brothers rode in formation, tight, controlled, silent behind their helmets. 32 miles of open road between them and a building where 3 children were waiting to be sold. Garrett thought about Lily, about the way she'd grabbed his hand, about the way she'd said, "Be my dad," like she'd reached into his chest and found the one thing he'd been hiding from himself for 46 years, that he wanted to matter to someone, that he wanted to protect something, that underneath 24 years of leather and iron and blood, there was a man who still knew the difference between right and wrong. He thought about Emma, 4 years old, brown hair, sitting in a warehouse right now. Did she have butterfly sneakers too? Did she know her mother's phone number? Was she brave like Lily? Or was she past brave, past scared, past everything? He twisted the throttle harder. The desert blurred. The highway disappeared under his wheels. And somewhere ahead, in a building off a road that most people had forgotten existed, a clock was counting down toward a moment that would test Garrett Mercer in ways that no fistfight, no bar brawl, no 24 years of outlaw life had ever prepared him for. He would have to walk into a room where children were being sold. He would have to look at the men selling them. He would have to pretend, with every fiber of his being, that he was one of them. And he would have to hold that mask in place for 20 minutes without breaking. 20 minutes. He could still feel Lily's handprint on his fingers. He could still hear her voice. Just for today, be my dad. He wasn't pretending then. He would have to pretend now. The warehouse was 11 miles out, then 8, then 5. Garrett Mercer rode toward the worst room he would ever enter, carrying nothing but a dead man's phone, a borrowed story, and a promise he'd made to a 5-year-old girl at a gas station. A promise that the good people were coming. They were coming. 3 Harleys peeled off from the formation and rolled down the access road. Garrett in front, Grizz to his left, Deacon to his right, riding slow now, riding loud, letting the engines announce them the way you announce yourself when you want people to know you're not sneaking, you're arriving. The other 4 brothers split off into the dark. Forge and Rattler circled the perimeter, finding positions at the side exits. Pixel parked a quarter-mile back on the road, tablet open, comms running, monitoring every signal in and out of the building. Preacher and Ace sat on their bikes in the shadows 200 yards from the front entrance. Engines off, waiting. The last line, the emergency nobody wanted to need. 2 guards stood at the warehouse entrance, both armed, both big, both scanning the 3 approaching bikers with the flat, unimpressed look of men who'd been paid enough not to ask questions, but not enough to stop being suspicious. Garrett killed his engine, swung off the bike, walked forward like he owned the ground under his boots. "Evening, gentlemen." His voice was easy, casual, the voice of a man who'd done this 100 times. Word got around about some quality product moving through the corridor tonight. Drove down from our chapter. 4 hours on the highway. Hope it's worth the gas money. The first guard, thick neck, shaved head, earpiece, held up a hand. "Nobody told us about riders." "Nobody tells you about a lot of things. That's above your pay grade, friend. The man inside knows we're coming." The guard looked at the second guard. The second guard looked at the Hells Angels patches on Garrett's cut, on Grizz's cut, on Deacon's cut. Something about the patches made a decision for them. Fear, respect, or just the understanding that turning away patch members of the most notorious motorcycle club in America was a problem they didn't want. Arms up. They searched all 3 of them. Thorough. Professional. Found Grizz's knife and took it. Found nothing else because there was nothing else to find. They'd left every weapon with Forge. "Go in." The door opened. Garrett walked through it. and then his lungs stopped working. He'd told himself he was ready. On the ride over, he'd built the wall inside himself, brick by brick. The same wall he'd used for 24 years to walk into rooms where bad things happened and not flinch. He'd told himself this was just another room, just another job, just another door. He was wrong. The children were already out. 3 of them sitting on metal folding chairs in the center of the concrete floor, positioned under work lights so harsh they turned everything into sharp shadows. Displayed, arranged, presented. Emma, 4 years old, brown hair tangled and unwashed. A yellow dress that had been clean once, maybe days ago, now smudged and wrinkled. Her legs dangled from the chair because her feet couldn't reach the floor. She was staring at nothing, not crying, not moving, not looking at anything at all. Like someone had reached inside this 4-year-old child and found the switch that made her a person and turned it off. Jack, 6, blonde hair matted to his forehead, sitting perfectly still, hands folded in his lap, back straight. The posture of a child who'd been told that if he moved, something terrible would happen. And he believed it. Maya, 8, dark hair falling across her face, and her eyes were blazing, not with tears, not with fear, with fury. The kind of fury that doesn't come from anger, the kind that gets forged in the worst furnace a human being can survive. She looked at every adult in the room like she was memorizing their faces for a reckoning she fully intended to deliver. Garrett felt his hands start to shake. He clenched them into fists inside his pockets. He locked his jaw so tight his teeth ached. He buried everything, the rage, the horror, the grief, the overwhelming need to grab these children and run, behind a wall of ice so thick he could barely breathe behind it. This was the hardest thing he had ever done. Harder than any fight. Harder than any beating he'd taken or given. Harder than the night he watched his best friend die on a barroom floor. Because in those moments, he was allowed to feel. Here, in this room, feeling anything would get these children killed. A man stepped forward from the far side of the warehouse. Tall, silver hair swept back, gold-rimmed glasses. A charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars. He moved with the fluid confidence of a man who owned not just this room, but every room he'd ever entered. Victor Ashland, the broker. Gentlemen, his voice was smooth, warm even. The voice of a man who could sell you anything and make you feel good about buying it. Welcome. I don't believe we've had the pleasure. Iron, Garrett said. This is Grizz and Deacon. We rode down from our chapter after a mutual friend mentioned the product quality in this corridor. And which mutual friend would that be? The kind who values discretion, which is why he stays mutual. Ashland smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. I appreciate discretion. It's the foundation of everything we do here. He gestured toward the children the way a sommelier would gesture toward a wine list. Shall I walk you through what's available? Garrett nodded. His throat was so tight he didn't trust himself to speak more than necessary. Ashland walked to Emma first. He stood over this 4-year-old child and began speaking about her like she was a piece of inventory. Age, physical condition, behavioral profile. He used the word compliant. He said she'd been through an adjustment period and was now responsive to direction. He mentioned her medical history, no conditions, no allergies, vaccinations current. Garrett's fingernails cut into his palms. He felt blood. He didn't stop. Ashland moved to Jack. Same presentation, same clinical, detached, professional language. He noted that Jack was well-behaved and unlikely to cause disruption. He called it a smooth transition profile. He was describing a 6-year-old human being the way a car dealer describes a sedan with low mileage. Then Maya. Ashland paused in front of her. Something shifted in his expression. The first crack Garrett had seen. This one, Ashland said, and for the first time his polished voice carried an edge, requires a firm hand. She's intelligent, resistant. She's bitten 2 handlers and attempted escape 3 times. Some buyers prefer spirit, others prefer compliance. Price adjusts accordingly. Maya stared at Ashlyn with those burning eyes. She didn't blink. She didn't look away. She stared at him like she was carving his face into her memory with a knife. Ashlyn looked away first. Garrett stepped forward. Mind if I take a closer look? I like to know what I'm buying. Of course, take your time. Garrett walked toward the chairs. Every step was measured. Every breath was controlled. Behind him, Grizz picked up the cue and started talking, asking Ashlyn about logistics, bulk arrangements, monthly availability, transportation networks, buying time. Every question was another 30 seconds. Every answer was another 30 seconds closer to Lockhart. Garrett knelt in front of Emma. Up close, it was worse. Her eyes were open, but they were empty. Whatever this child had been through in the days or weeks since she'd been taken had pushed her so far inside herself that what remained on the surface was barely there. She didn't react to Garrett kneeling in front of her. She didn't flinch. She didn't look at him. Emma, he whispered, so quiet that only she could hear. My name is Garrett. I'm not one of them. I need you to listen to me very carefully. The police are coming. When you hear loud bangs, I need you to get on the floor, lie flat, and cover your ears. Can you do that? Nothing. No response. Just those empty eyes staring past him. Then, so small he almost missed it, she nodded. Once. A movement so tiny it was barely more than a thought, but it was there. This 4-year-old child, hollowed out by whatever nightmares had been inflicted on her, heard a stranger kneel down and tell her help was coming. And somewhere deep inside the place she'd retreated to, she heard him. Garrett moved to Jack. Same whisper, same instructions. Jack's eyes filled with tears instantly. His lower lip trembled, but he nodded. Harder, faster, and then he whispered back, Is my mom coming? Garrett's chest caved. She's coming, buddy. I promise she's coming. He moved to Maya. He didn't even finish the first sentence. I heard you, Maya said, not whispering. She didn't care who heard. You told her the police are coming. You told her to lie flat. Her eyes locked onto his. 8 years old, and she had the stare of a combat veteran. People lie to us all the time. The man who took me said my grandmother was sick. The woman at the house said we were going home. Everyone lies. Why should I believe you? Garrett held her gaze. He didn't flinch. He didn't soften his voice or try to sound gentle. This child didn't want gentle. She wanted truth. Because I rode 32 miles to walk into this building with no weapon, no badge, and no plan except to keep you alive until the people with badges get here. That's not a lie. That's stupid. And nobody's stupid on purpose unless they mean it. Maya studied him for a long moment. Something shifted behind those fierce eyes. Not trust exactly, but the possibility of trust. The first crack in a wall she'd built to survive. Okay, she said. I'll believe you. But if you're lying, I'll know, and I'll remember your face. I'm counting on it. He stood up, turned back toward Ashlyn and Grizz. His face was a mask, casual, interested, the face of a buyer browsing merchandise. Behind that mask, every cell in his body was screaming. Grizz was still talking. He'd gotten Ashlyn deep into a conversation about the network's reach. How many states, how many collectors, what the pipeline looked like from acquisition to delivery. Ashlyn was talking freely, proudly even, the way men talk when they believe they're among their own kind. He was describing an empire. Routes, systems, contacts, distribution channels. Every word was evidence. Every sentence was another nail in a coffin that Ashlyn didn't know was being built around him. 12 minutes. Lockhart needed 20. They were burning time, but not fast enough. Then one of Ashlyn's men walked up to the broker and whispered something. Ashlyn's expression didn't change, but his body did. A slight stiffening of the shoulders, a shift in weight. Subtle. invisible to anyone who hadn't spent 24 years reading body language in dangerous rooms. "Gentlemen," Ashlyn said, and his voice was still smooth, but there was a new note underneath it. "I took the liberty of making some inquiries about your chapter, a professional courtesy. I like to know who I'm doing business with." Garrett's heart rate climbed. He kept his face still. "Interestingly," Ashlyn continued, "no one in your chapter's leadership authorized a buying trip tonight. In fact, your sergeant-at-arms seemed quite surprised to hear your names mentioned in this context." The room shifted. The two guards by the door straightened. A third man Garrett hadn't noticed before stepped out of the shadows near the back wall. "That is interesting," Garrett said. He didn't miss a beat, didn't hesitate. "It's interesting because this is a personal purchase. Off the books. My chapter president doesn't know because my chapter president doesn't need to know. Plausible deniability. You understand that concept better than most, I'd imagine." Ashlyn's eyes narrowed behind those gold-rimmed glasses. He was calculating, weighing, running the kind of cost-benefit analysis that a man who'd spent years in high-stakes criminal enterprise runs automatically. "A personal purchase," Ashlyn repeated. "Off the books. You're telling me none of your buyers operate independently? Every single one of them reports to someone. Nobody in your world does anything for themselves?" Something relaxed in Ashlyn's posture, just barely. He smiled. "Fair point. Discretion cuts both ways." He extended his hand. "Shall we discuss pricing?" Garrett shook his hand, the hand of a man who sold children. He squeezed hard enough to feel the bones shift and told himself it was a greeting, not the beginning of what he wanted to do to this man. 15 minutes down, 5 to go. Then a man Garrett hadn't spoken to approached him. Mid-50s, expensive shoes, brown leather, freshly polished. A quiet face, intelligent eyes. He held a glass of something amber and stood close enough to speak without being overheard. "Richard Hale," the man said. No handshake offered. "And you are not a buyer." Garrett's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Hale sipped his drink. His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "I've been buying from Ashlyn for 2 years. I know what buyers look like. They look at the children like objects, like things they want. You looked at them like they were people. You looked at that little girl in the yellow dress like she was someone's daughter." He paused. "Also, you're sweating. Buyers don't sweat. They've made their peace with what they are. You haven't, which means you aren't one of us." Garrett's mind raced. 17 minutes. 3 minutes to Lockhart's breach. This man could blow everything with one word. "So," Hale said quietly, "how long before this goes loud?" Garrett made the fastest decision of his life. He looked at Richard Hale, this well-dressed, educated, articulate man who had been purchasing children for 2 years. And he made a calculation that went against every instinct he had. 90 seconds. Get on the ground when it starts. Stay flat. Don't reach for anything. Hale nodded. His face showed nothing. No panic, no anger, just the resigned acceptance of a man who'd been waiting for this moment longer than he'd admit. He stepped back, set his drink down on a crate. Ashlyn noticed Hale's expression, noticed the distance Hale had put between himself and the rest of the room. The broker's eyes went sharp. "Richard, is something wrong?" "Nothing at all, Victor. Just getting some air." Ashlyn looked at Hale, looked at Garrett, looked at Grizz. Something was connecting behind those gold-rimmed glasses. Something was clicking into place. "Gentlemen," Ashlyn said slowly, "I'm going to need you to—" The warehouse doors exploded inward, not opened, exploded, metal screaming against metal. A concussion of light and sound that turned the world white. Flashbang. The crack was so loud it erased thought, erased vision, erased everything except pure reflex. Garrett threw himself forward. He covered the distance to Emma's chair in 2 steps and wrapped his body around her. His arms went over her head, his back to the room, his chest against the tiny frame of a 4-year-old child who weighed nothing, absolutely nothing. And he held her so tight that if a bullet came through, it would have to go through every inch of him first. Grizz was already a jack. The massive man had scooped the 6-year-old off the chair and was on the floor with the boy pressed beneath him, shielded by 260 pounds of biker and pure will. Deacon covered Maya. He didn't pick her up. Later he'd say it was because she didn't look like she wanted to be picked up. He knelt beside her and put his body between her and the room and said, "Stay down, stay down, stay down." Maya was already flat on the floor. She'd moved the instant the doors blew in. She'd listened. She'd believed. Lockhart's team poured through 3 entry points. Tactical gear, rifles up, voices shouting commands that overlapped into a single wall of authority. "Down! Everybody down! Hands on the floor! Do not move!" One of Ashland's guards reached for his waistband. The sound of the shot was flat and final. He dropped. Another ran for the back exit. He made it 4 steps before Forge came through the door like a freight train and took him off his feet. They hit the concrete together. Forge had him pinned before the man's head stopped bouncing. Ashland didn't run, didn't reach. He stood perfectly still, hands raised, palms forward, watching his entire operation collapse around him with an expression that Garrett would never forget. Not shock, not fear, but something closer to mathematical disappointment. Like a chess player watching the board turn against him and already calculating his next game. 41 seconds, start to finish. 41 seconds, and it was over. The silence that followed was louder than the breach. Emma opened her eyes. She was still in Garrett's arms, pressed against his chest, her tiny fist gripping his leather cut so hard her knuckles were white. "Is it over?" she whispered. "It's over, sweetheart. It's over." She looked up at him, those empty eyes that had stared at nothing for God knows how many days. They focused. They found his face, and something turned back on inside her. Some light that had been extinguished flickered back to life. She reached for him with both arms, wrapped them around his neck, buried her face against his shoulder, and she held on like the world would end if she let go. Garrett stood up, lifting her with him. She weighed nothing. She was warm and trembling and alive, and she smelled like dust and fear and something underneath all of it that was still, impossibly, a child. He held her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Across the room, Grizz was sitting on the floor with Jack in his lap. The 6-year-old had broken. Whatever dam had held everything back, the fear, the confusion, the days of silence and obedience, it shattered the moment safety arrived. He was sobbing, huge, racking, whole-body sobs that tore out of him like they'd been trapped under pressure for days. Grizz held him with arms that had thrown men through walls and said nothing, just held him, let him break, let him be a child again. Maya stood up. She didn't cry. She didn't reach for anyone. She straightened her shirt. She pushed the hair out of her face. She watched Victor Ashland being led past her in handcuffs, and she looked at him with a gaze so cold, so focused, so ancient in an 8-year-old face that one of the officers escorting Ashland actually flinched. Then she turned to Garrett. "You told her the police were coming. I heard you." Her voice was steady, measured, the voice of a child who had survived something that would have broken most adults. "People lie to us all the time. The man who took me said my grandmother was sick. The woman at the safe house said we were going somewhere nice. The man with the glasses told us our parents didn't want us anymore." She paused. Let that land. "You didn't lie. You said the police were coming, and they came. You said to lie flat, and I did, and nobody got hurt." She tilted her head. "Why did you come?" Garrett looked at this girl, this small, fierce, unbreakable girl, and he told her the truth. Not a version of the truth, not a softened truth. The truth, because somebody had to. Maya considered this, turned it over, weighted against every lie she'd been told, every false promise, every adult who had failed her. "Okay," she said, and she nodded once, with the gravity of a judge delivering a verdict. "I believe you." She turned and walked toward the EMTs who had come through the door behind Lockhart's team. She walked straight-backed, chin up, arms at her sides. An officer moved to carry her. She held up one hand. "I can walk." And she did. 8 years old, walking out of the worst room in the world on her own 2 feet, refusing to be carried, refusing to give this place the satisfaction of seeing her break. Garrett watched her go. He was still holding Emma. The 4-year-old had fallen asleep against his shoulder. The sudden, total collapse of a child whose body had finally decided it was safe enough to shut down. Her breathing was slow and even. Her fist was still wrapped around a fold of his leather cut. Grizz appeared beside him. Jack had been passed to an EMT, but Grizz's shirt was still wet with the boy's tears. He looked at Garrett. He looked at Emma sleeping in Garrett's arms. 23 years, Grizz said quietly. 23 years I've been riding with you. I've seen you do a lot of things, some of them good, a lot of them not. But this, right here, right now, holding that little girl. He stopped, swallowed. This is the only thing that ever made the patch mean something. Garrett didn't answer. He couldn't. Emma shifted against his shoulder, and her small hand found the edge of his cut and squeezed tighter in her sleep. Lockhart crossed the room toward them. Tactical vest still on, weapon holstered, face set in the controlled intensity of a woman who had just executed the operation she'd spent 4 years building toward. She looked at the sleeping child. She looked at Garrett. "We need to talk," she said. "But first, thank you. Those children are alive because of what you did tonight. They're alive because a 5-year-old girl at a gas station grabbed my hand. I'm just the domino that fell after her." Lockhart almost smiled. Almost. "We have Ashland. We have 6 of his people. We have the buyers. But I need the broker to talk, Mercer. Without his testimony, I can prosecute the room. Foot soldiers and customers. The network above him survives. The people who fund this, who built this, they scatter, they rebuild. And 6 months from now, we're standing in another warehouse, looking at another set of chairs." Garrett looked at Ashland, now cuffed in the back of a black SUV, staring straight ahead through the windshield. Composed, still wearing that charcoal suit, still looking like a man who'd walked out of a boardroom instead of a trafficking operation. "Give me 15 minutes with him," Garrett said. "I can't officially authorize that." "I didn't ask you to officially authorize it." Lockhart held his gaze for 3 long seconds. Then she turned to her team. "Everyone take a perimeter check. I want every exit secured and every inch of this road covered for incoming vehicles. Move!" Her officers moved. Every single one of them walked in the opposite direction from the black SUV. Garrett handed Emma, still sleeping, still gripping his cut, to a waiting EMT. Peeling her fingers away was like pulling stitches from a wound. Each tiny finger released a little more, and each one hurt. "What's your name?" the EMT asked, looking at Garrett. "Nobody," Garrett said. "Take care of her." He walked toward the SUV where Victor Ashland waited, opened the rear door, climbed in, closed it behind him. The 2 men sat in silence for 10 seconds. Ashland's hands were cuffed in his lap. His gold-rimmed glasses sat slightly crooked on his face, the only evidence that anything in his world had gone wrong. "I know who you are," Ashland said. "Or rather, I know what you are. Hell's Angels, Chapter Enforcer. No doubt you've been sent to threaten me with violence if I don't cooperate." His voice was calm, bored almost. "I've been threatened by better than you." Garrett leaned back. "I'm not here to threaten you, Victor. I'm here to save your life." Something flickered behind Ashland's glasses. Interest. Save my life? The person above you, the one funding this network, the client. How long do you think it takes them to find out you've been arrested? They likely already know. And how long after that before they decide you're a liability? Ashland said nothing. You know how this works. You've been in this business long enough. Loose ends don't survive. They send someone. Could be in county lockup. Could be a transfer van. Could be a cup of coffee with something extra in it. You know the playbook because you've probably written parts of it. Ashlyn's jaw tightened. The first real crack. The first evidence that behind the suit and the glasses and the professional detachment, there was a man who understood exactly how disposable he was to the people above him. Federal witness protection, Garrett said. Full cooperation. Everything you know, names, accounts, communication channels, every piece of this operation from top to bottom. In exchange, you disappear. New name, new life, somewhere nobody can find you. It's the only play that keeps you breathing. And if I refuse? Then your lawyer gets you bail, you walk out of the courthouse, and you're dead within 72 hours. Not because of me, because of them. You know it. I know it. Let's stop pretending. Ashlyn went quiet. Garrett watched his face, watched the calculations running behind his eyes. This was a man who dealt in numbers, in risk assessment, in cold probability. Garrett was speaking his language. Then Ashlyn said something Garrett didn't expect. The girl, the one with the dark hair, Maya, he said her name like it cost him something. When they brought her in, she didn't cry, didn't beg. She looked at me, straight at me, not the way children usually look, not with fear, not with confusion. She looked at me like she was memorizing my face, like she wanted to be able to identify me in a lineup, like I was something less than human, and she wanted to remember exactly what that looked like. He paused. His voice had changed. The polished professional veneer had thinned, and something raw showed through. I've been looked at by many people, Mr. Mercer. Angry people, desperate people, powerful people. I have never, not once in my life, been looked at the way that 8-year-old girl looked at me. The silence in the SUV was absolute. I'll talk, Ashlyn said. FBI, federal protection, immunity in writing. And I want it on record that I cooperated voluntarily. I'll make the call. One more thing, Ashlyn looked at Garrett for the first time. Really looked at him. The person running this, it's not one person, it's 4. A consortium. Extremely wealthy, extremely connected. The kind of people who don't appear in databases, who communicate through 6 layers of encryption, who pay in cryptocurrency routed through 14 countries. He leaned forward. You pulled a thread tonight, Mr. Mercer. But the tapestry is much larger than you know. Garrett opened the door, stepped out, closed it behind him. He walked back to Lockhart, who was standing with her arms crossed, watching him. He'll talk. FBI, federal protection, full immunity. And Lockhart, it's not one person above him. It's 4, a consortium. Lockhart closed her eyes. When she opened them, something burned there. Triumph. Exhaustion, and the fierce determination of a woman who had just been handed the key to a door she'd been beating against for 4 years. 4 names, she said. We're going to bring down 4 names. Behind them, ambulance lights painted the desert red and blue. 3 children were being loaded onto stretchers, wrapped in blankets, carried toward a world that owed them more than it could ever repay. And in the back of a black SUV, a man in a charcoal suit sat staring at his cuffed hands, thinking about the way an 8-year-old girl had looked at him, like he was something less than human. He was right. She was right. And both of them knew it. Garrett carried Emma to the ambulance because she wouldn't let anyone else do it. The EMTs had tried. Twice. The first time she'd screamed, not loud, not dramatic, just a short, sharp sound that came from somewhere so deep inside her that everyone within earshot flinched. The second time, she'd simply locked her fingers tighter around Garrett's cut and pressed her face harder into his neck and refused to exist for anyone but him. So he carried her. She was still half asleep, that strange, fragile sleep children fall into after their bodies have burned through every drop of adrenaline in fear. Her breathing was slow. Her weight was nothing, maybe 35 pounds of 4-year-old humanity pressed against his chest. Her fist held a fold of his leather, cut in a grip that would leave wrinkles in the leather for weeks. He reached the ambulance. The EMT, a woman, mid-30s, steady hands, kind eyes, nodded at him and held out a blanket. "I need to take her now," the EMT said gently. "We need to check her over, make sure she's okay." Garrett looked down at Emma. She was awake now, watching him with those eyes that had been empty an hour ago, but weren't empty anymore. Something had come back, something fragile and bruised, but alive. "Emma, sweetheart, this lady is going to take care of you. She's safe, I promise." "Are you leaving?" 2 words. "Are you leaving?" Spoken by a 4-year-old who had been taken from everyone she loved, locked in a dark place, treated like cargo, and had just survived a breach that shook the walls. "Are you leaving?" The question underneath the question, "Are you going to disappear too?" "I'm right here," Garrett said. "I'm not going anywhere." He transferred her to the EMT. She peeled herself away from him, one finger at a time. Each finger a tiny separation. Each one a small, specific pain that Garrett felt in places he didn't know he had. Her hand was the last thing to let go. Her fingers trailed across his palm as the EMT lifted her onto the stretcher. She looked up at him from the white sheet. "What's your name?" "Garrett." "Thank you, Garrett." She said it the way adults say it when they mean it with everything they have. Not a child's casual, "Thank you for the cookie," a real one, the kind that carries weight, the kind that costs something to give and something to receive. He turned away before anyone could see his face. He walked behind the ambulance and put his hand flat against the metal panel and just breathed. In, out, in, out. His hand was shaking. Both hands were shaking. His whole body was vibrating with something he couldn't name. Not adrenaline, not fear, not anger. Something bigger. Something that had been locked in a room inside him for 35 years and was now pounding on the walls. "Iron," Griz's voice, close, quiet, the voice his brother used when something mattered. Garrett didn't turn around. "Yeah." "You okay?" "No." "Good, you shouldn't be." Grizz leaned against the ambulance beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, 2 men in leather cuts, one of them 6'5" with a red beard, the other with scarred hands and a face that made strangers cross the street, standing behind an ambulance in the desert dark, trying to remember how to breathe. "The kids," Garrett said. "Tell me about them." "You sure?" "Tell me." Grizz pulled a small notebook from his cut. He always carried one, had since his first year as a prospect. His handwriting was surprisingly neat for a man with hands the size of dinner plates. Emma Sullivan, age 4, taken from a playground in Flagstaff 11 days ago. Her parents reported it within 20 minutes. Local police issued an alert. Nothing. Dead end after dead end. Her father has been driving every road between Flagstaff and the California border for 9 days straight. Hasn't slept. Her mother hasn't left the police station. Garrett closed his eyes. Jack Hernandez, age 6, taken from a bus stop in Henderson, Nevada, 8 days ago. His mother works 2 jobs, morning shift at a hotel, night shift at a warehouse. His older sister was supposed to walk him home. She was 12 minutes late. 12 minutes and he was gone. The sister hasn't spoken since. Not a word. She sits in his room and waits. Garrett's jaw tightened until it ached. Maya Torres, age 8, taken from the parking lot of a grocery store in Riverside, California, 6 days ago. Her parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. She lives with her grandmother, Elena Torres, age 71. Elena reported her missing within an hour. She has been sitting in the Riverside police station for 6 days. She will not leave. She will not go home. She sleeps in the chair. She told the officers that she's not moving until somebody brings her granddaughter back. Garrett opened his eyes. 71 years old, sitting in a police station for 6 days, refusing to leave. Because nobody was doing enough. Because nobody was doing enough. Garrett pushed off the ambulance, looked at Grizz. I need you to remember something for me. When the adrenaline wears off, when the doubt kicks in, when I start asking whether any of this was worth the risk, I need you to say 3 names. Emma, Jack, Maya. Don't let me forget. Brother, I couldn't forget if I tried. Lockhart found them 10 minutes later. She'd removed her tactical vest. Her dark hair, with that silver streak she'd earned in 4 years of chasing monsters, was pulled back tight. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but her eyes were sharp, hungry. She had a predator's focus, and right now her prey was sitting in the back of a black SUV. Ashlyn says he'll talk, she said. Full cooperation. Names, accounts, communication channels, everything. He will, Garrett said. I was with him. He's scared, not of us, of them, the people above him. His lawyer is already on the way, Derek Manning, big firm out of Los Angeles, the kind of lawyer who makes evidence lose its way between the courthouse and the filing cabinet. Once Manning gets here, Ashlyn clams up. I've seen it before. The lawyer walks in, reminds the client of his rights, and 45 minutes of cooperation becomes 20 years of silence. How long before Manning arrives? 2 hours, maybe less if he charters. Then you have 2 hours to get everything Ashlyn has. I need more than 2 hours, Mercer. I need testimony that holds up in federal court. I need specifics, names, dates, amounts. And I need Ashlyn to say it all on record, with the FBI present, under a formal cooperation agreement. Then get the FBI here. They're mobilizing. Nearest field office is San Bernardino, 90 minutes at best. She paused, looked at him. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to understand that I'm not asking officially. You need me to keep Ashlyn talking until the FBI arrives. I need him to not change his mind. I need him to remember why he decided to cooperate. I need someone in his ear who isn't wearing a badge, because men like Ashlyn don't respond to authority. They respond to reality. You want me to babysit a child trafficker. I want you to make sure that the man who can bring down this entire network doesn't suddenly decide that a high-powered lawyer and a conspiracy of silence is a better bet than the truth. Garrett looked at the SUV, at the silhouette of Ashlyn sitting motionless behind the glass, at the ambulance where 3 children were being wrapped in blankets and loaded for transport, at his brother standing in the parking lot, silent, waiting. I'll keep him talking, Garrett said. But Lockhart, when this is done, when the FBI has what they need, when the warrants are signed and the doors are getting kicked in, I need you to make me a promise. What promise? The families, Emma's parents, Jack's mother, Maya's grandmother. I need to know they get their kids back tonight. Not tomorrow, not after processing, tonight. Lockhart's face softened, just for a second, just enough to remind Garrett that underneath the tactical vest and the badge and 4 years of hunting the worst people alive, there was a woman who still felt things. I'll make the calls personally, she said. Emma's parents are already driving. They should be here within the hour. Jack's mother is on a flight from Henderson. And Maya's grandmother... Lockhart stopped. Something moved across her face. Maya's grandmother has been sitting in a police station for 6 days, Mercer. When I tell her we found Maya, she's going to... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Garrett went back to the SUV, opened the door, sat across from Ashlyn. The broker hadn't moved. His hands were still cuffed in his lap, his glasses still slightly crooked, his face still composed. But something had changed in the time Garrett had been gone. The mask was thinner. The cracks were wider. Ashlyn looked like a man who had spent the last 10 minutes alone with his own thoughts and discovered that his thoughts were no longer a place he wanted to be. The FBI is coming, Garrett said. 90 minutes. Your lawyer is coming too. 2 hours. You have a choice to make before either of them arrives. I've made my choice. Choices change, especially when expensive lawyers start whispering about reasonable doubt. Ashlyn shook his head slowly. You don't understand. I'm not going back. There's nothing to go back to. The consortium, the 4 individuals who fund this network, they are not people who forgive failure. They are not people who allow loose ends. If I walk out of this with my lawyer, I have perhaps 72 hours before a very professional, very quiet individual makes certain that I never testify about anything. Then give me the names. I'll give the names to the FBI under formal agreement, with immunity in writing. Fine, but give me something now, something I can verify, something that proves you're not just talking to buy time. Ashlyn studied him. You don't trust me. You sell children, Victor. Trust isn't part of this conversation. Something flickered in Ashlyn's expression. Not offense. Recognition. Like Garrett had named the thing that Ashlyn had been avoiding naming for years. The consortium communicates through a proprietary encrypted relay system. Custom-built, no commercial platform. The access key is a 12-digit alphanumeric code that changes every 72 hours. The current code is in my phone, in a folder labeled Investment Portfolios. Your tech man with the glasses already has the phone. Tell him to look for a file called Q3 Projections. It's not a spreadsheet, it's the access key. Garrett stepped out, walked to Pixel, relayed the instructions. Pixel opened the file. His eyes went wide behind his glasses. This is real. This is an active encryption key for a relay network. I can see message traffic, active accounts, routing nodes in 4 countries. He looked up at Garrett. If I dump this to a secure server before the key rotates, the FBI has the entire communication infrastructure. Do it. Pixel's fingers flew. 2 minutes later, he looked up. Done. Everything's mirrored. Even if they kill the network, we have the archive. Garrett walked back to Lockhart, told her. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was something in them he hadn't seen before. Not triumph exactly, but the fierce, exhausted satisfaction of a woman who had just been handed the weapon she'd needed for 4 years. Mercer, do you have any idea what you just gave me? A headache for some very wealthy people. 4 names. If Ashlyn gives us 4 names and this encryption data holds up, we're not talking about a local bust anymore. We're talking about a federal RICO case. We're talking about dismantling an entire trafficking infrastructure across 3 states. Good. Go home. Get out of here before the FBI arrives. I can explain the bikers at the perimeter. I can explain an anonymous tip. I cannot explain a patched Hell's Angel sitting in my suspect's transport vehicle. One more thing. What? Emma, the 4-year-old. When her parents get here, don't tell them my name. Don't tell them anything about me. Just tell them she's safe. Lockhart frowned. Why? Because it's not about me. It was never about me. He turned and walked toward his brothers. Behind him, Lockhart watched him go with an expression that was equal parts frustration and respect. The ride back to the clubhouse took 47 minutes. 7 Harleys in formation. Nobody spoke. The desert wind pulled at their cuts, and the engines filled the silence with the only sound that felt appropriate: thunder. They pulled into the compound at 11:42 p.m. The yard was full. 34 patched members were standing outside, waiting. Word had traveled the way word always travels in the club: fast, incomplete, and loaded with speculation. Dale Rooster Gibson, chapter president, silver-haired, lean, hard-eyed, stood at the front. His arms were crossed. His face was unreadable. Garrett killed his engine, dismounted, walked through the gauntlet of his brothers until he stood face to face with the man who ran the chapter. You want to explain? Rooster said. You know what happened. I know what I've been told. I've been told that 7 of my patched members rode into a trafficking operation. I've been told that you coordinated directly with state police. I've been told that you were inside a building during a law enforcement raid wearing this club's colors. I've been told that you created a direct line of communication between the Hells Angels and a state police detective. Rooster's voice was measured, controlled. The voice of a man who ran an outlaw motorcycle club the way a CEO runs a corporation, with absolute authority and zero tolerance for surprises. So I'll ask you again, explain. Garrett didn't flinch. 3 children were going to be sold tonight. We stopped it. You stopped it by working with cops? Yes. While wearing the patch? Yes. Do you understand what you've done? The leverage you've created? If that detective, Lockhart, if she decides to use tonight against this club, she has 7 patched members on record cooperating with a law enforcement operation. That's not a favor, Iron. That's a leash. She won't use it. You don't know that. I know her. You met her 4 hours ago. And in 4 hours, she could have arrested every single one of us. She didn't. She could have identified us in her report. She won't. She could have held us at the scene until FBI arrived. She told us to leave. Rooster said nothing. His jaw worked. His eyes moved from Garrett to Grizz to Deacon to every man who'd ridden that night. Grizz stepped forward. Rooster, I was there. I saw those children. I saw what was being done to them. And I'm telling you, not as your sergeant at arms, but as a man, that what we did tonight was right. Right doesn't keep us out of prison. No, but it keeps us human. The clubhouse went silent. 41 men and not a single sound. Then Preacher moved. The oldest man in the room, 65, 40 years patched, white beard, hands that had seen more violence and more mercy than most people could imagine, walked to the center of the room with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who knew the weight of what he was about to say. I'm going to speak now, Preacher said, and I'm going to speak once. Nobody interrupted Preacher, not even Rooster. Garrett broke the rules. He broke protocol. He brought law enforcement into club business. He wore the patch inside a police operation. He made decisions that put this club at risk without authorization from leadership. Preacher paused. Let every accusation sit. Let every brother absorb the weight of it. Every single one of those things is true, and I would ride with him again tomorrow. He turned, faced the room. 40 years I've been patched. 40 years I've watched this club do what it does. Some of it good, a lot of it gray. Some of it dark enough that I don't think about it before I sleep. His voice dropped, not softer, deeper. But tonight, 7 men wearing Hells Angels patches walked into a building where children were being sold, and they stopped it. Not for money, not for territory, not for reputation, because it was right. Because there are lines. There have always been lines. And this, what was happening in that warehouse, this is the line that defines whether these patches mean anything at all. He looked at Rooster. Vote it however you want, Dale, but if this club can't protect children, then I've got no interest in what it can do. The silence that followed lasted 12 seconds. Garrett counted. Rooster looked at the floor, looked at the ceiling, looked at his brothers. Vote, he said. The vote carried. Not unanimous. 3 members abstained, 2 voted against, but it carried. Rooster nodded once. Conditions, he said. Whatever you're doing, this thing, this operation, it stays separate from the club. Separate from club business, separate from club money, separate from club communications. You don't use the patch to open doors. You don't mention the club by name. You never testify. And if it blows back on us, you take the weight alone. Agreed. Rooster held Garrett's gaze. Then something shifted in his face. The president dissolved, and for just a moment, the man underneath appeared. My daughter's 11, Rooster said quietly. She rides her bike to school every morning. I watch from the window until she turns the corner. For 30 seconds every morning, I can't breathe. He paused. Protect them, Iron. All of them. The meeting broke. Brothers scattered to the bar, to their bikes, to the dark corners where men go when they've felt too much and need to stop feeling for a while. Garrett sat alone at the picnic table behind the clubhouse. The desert night was cool now, the heat of the day long gone. He could hear the muffled sounds of the bar inside, music, conversation, the clinking of bottles. Normal sounds, club sounds, sounds that had been the rhythm of his life for 24 years. His phone buzzed. A text from Lockhart. Ashland talked. 4 names. FBI has warrants. Arrests begin at dawn. He read it twice. 4 names. The consortium. The people who built the machine, funded the machine, profited from the machine. By morning, their doors would be the ones getting kicked in. His phone buzzed again. A second text from Lockhart. Emma's parents arrived. She asked about the man with the leather jacket. Her dad cried. Garrett read that sentence 4 times. She asked about the man with the leather jacket. This 4-year-old girl, reunited with her parents after 11 days of hell, after being traded and transported and displayed like merchandise, after surviving things that no child should ever have to know exist. She asked about him. Her dad cried. He put the phone down on the table. He put his hands flat on the wood. He stared at the sky, wide open, thick with stars, indifferent and ancient and beautiful in the way only a desert sky can be. And for the first time since he was 11 years old, standing in a kitchen, reading a note his father left on the table, Garrett Iron Mercer felt something hot and unfamiliar burn behind his eyes. He didn't fight it. He didn't seal it away. He didn't lock the door. He sat at that table, alone, under a sky full of stars, and he let himself feel every single thing he'd been carrying for 35 years. The boy whose father left, the man who never became a father, the enforcer who'd spent 2 decades convincing himself that feeling nothing was the same as being strong, the stranger at a gas station who'd held a child's hand and discovered that he still had a heart and it still worked, and it was breaking and healing at the same time. A tear hit the wood, then another. He let them fall. Nobody saw, nobody needed to. This wasn't for anyone else. This was for him, for the man he'd been and the man he was becoming, and the children who'd shown him the difference. Emma, Jack, Maya, and Lily, the little girl with butterfly sneakers who'd started all of it with 5 words at a gas station. His phone buzzed one more time. A final text from Lockhart, sent 30 seconds after the last one. Maya's grandmother collapsed when we told her. She's okay. She just couldn't stand anymore. She's holding Maya now. She won't let go. She says to tell the man who came for her granddaughter that God sent him. Her words, not mine. Garrett put the phone down. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. He breathed. And somewhere in the desert dark, in a hospital room, in an ambulance, in a grandmother's arms, 3 children were breathing too, alive and safe and held and loved. Because a 5-year-old girl with butterfly sneakers ran to the scariest man in the parking lot and said, "Just for today, be my dad." And he said, yes. 6 months changed everything. 6 months changed nothing. The club still rode, still lived in the gray spaces between law and lawlessness, between the world's rules and their own. The Harleys still thundered down the same highways, the same desert roads, the same stretches of asphalt that had carried them for decades. From the outside, nothing looked different. Same leather, same patches, same men that people crossed the street to avoid. But underneath, quiet, invisible, running like a wire buried beneath the surface, something new existed. They called it the line. It started simple, a prepaid phone, 1 number, routed through Pixel's encrypted systems so it couldn't be traced, couldn't be tapped, couldn't be connected to the club. The number went to Garrett, only Garrett, and it was given, carefully, selectively, through Lockhart's network, to the people who needed it most. Parents who felt the system was too slow, teachers who saw things that reports couldn't fix, social workers who'd watch cases fall through cracks wide enough to swallow children whole. The first call came on a Tuesday afternoon, a father in Victorville. His voice was wrecked, the kind of wreck that only comes from weeks of screaming into a void and hearing nothing back. His 12-year-old daughter was being abused by her mother's boyfriend. He'd reported it, filed papers, called the police, called Child Protective Services, got restraining orders that the boyfriend ignored, and court dates that got postponed, and a system that moved at the speed of paperwork, while his daughter came home with bruises that changed color but never disappeared. "They keep telling me to be patient," the father said. "They keep telling me the process takes time, but my daughter doesn't have time. She's running out of time." Garrett listened. He asked questions, specific, direct, the kind of questions that cut through emotion and got to facts. Address, name, schedule, patterns. 2 days later, the boyfriend opened his front door at 6 in the morning and found Grizz standing on his porch. Grizz didn't touch him, didn't threaten him, didn't say more than 11 words. "You're done hurting her. Leave town. Don't make me come back." The boyfriend was gone by noon. He didn't come back. The father called Garrett that night, crying so hard he could barely form sentences. "She smiled today. First time in 4 months. She smiled." The second call came a week later. A teacher in Riverside. She'd been watching a 7-year-old boy come to school with bruises on his arms and cigarette burns on the backs of his hands. She documented everything, filed reports with Child Services. 3 reports in 2 months. Nothing happened. The case was under review. The boy kept coming to school with new marks. "I can't sleep," the teacher said. "I close my eyes and I see his hands, those little hands with burns on them, and I keep filing reports and nobody does anything, and I don't know what to do anymore." Garrett passed the information to Lockhart. Lockhart made calls. Within 72 hours, a new caseworker was assigned, one Lockhart personally trusted, and the boy was removed from the home. The teacher called Garrett back. She didn't cry. She just said, "Thank you for hearing me." And that was enough. The third call was the one that kept Garrett up at night. A 16-year-old girl. Her voice was barely a whisper. She was calling from a gas station bathroom, the only place she could find with a door that locked. "I don't know where I am," she whispered. "I don't know who to call. The police. Last time I called the police, they brought me back. They brought me back to the house because the woman said she was my foster mother, and they believed her. Please, please don't send me back." Garrett had Pixel trace the call in under 90 seconds. Gas station in Barstow. He called Rattler, who was 20 minutes out. Rattler picked her up, drove her to a shelter that Lockhart had vetted, a real one, with real locks and real people who understood what this girl had been through. The girl's name was Destiny. She was 16. She weighed 93 pounds. When Rattler walked into the gas station and said, "I'm here to help. A man named Garrett sent me," she looked at him with eyes that had stopped believing in help a long time ago. "Why?" she asked. "Why would anyone help me?" Rattler, 27, scar on his jaw, the youngest patched member in the chapter, looked at this girl and said the same thing Garrett had said to Maya in the warehouse 6 months ago. Because somebody has to. Destiny was in a safe house by midnight, enrolled in a program by the end of the week. 3 months later, she called Garrett, not from a gas station bathroom, from a classroom. She was getting her GED. "I just wanted you to know," she said. "I'm still here. I'm still going." Garrett said, "That's all I needed to hear." The line grew. Not fast, not loud. It grew the way things grow when they're built on trust instead of advertising. One call at a time, one family at a time, one child at a time. Some cases needed Lockhart. Some cases needed a badge and a warrant, and the full weight of the law. Some cases needed the kind of persuasion that only Hell's Angels at a front door at 6 in the morning could provide. And some cases, more than Garrett expected, needed nothing more than someone who picked up the phone and said, "Tell me everything." Ashland's testimony brought down 26 people across 3 states. The 4 names, the consortium, were exactly what Lockhart had feared and hoped. A retired federal judge in Phoenix, a real estate developer in Las Vegas, a tech executive in San Francisco, and a congressman's chief of staff in Washington, D.C. 4 men who'd never touched a child, never visited a warehouse, never dirtied their hands with the mechanics of the operation. They sat at the top and moved money through layers so thick that no one had ever reached them before. Until now. The trial lasted 4 months. National news, every network, every front page. The evidence was overwhelming. Ashland's testimony, Pixel's encrypted data, the communication archives, the financial trails. One by one, the defendants fell. Guilty, 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 guilty. 22 children were reunited with their families. 22. That number sat in Garrett's chest like a stone. Not because it wasn't enough, because it was. Because each one of those 22 was a child who got to go home. A child who got to sleep in their own bed again. A child who got to hear their mother's voice say, "I'm here," and believe it. But Garrett also thought about the ones they hadn't found. The names on Ashland's list that led to dead ends. The children whose trails went cold. The faces that existed only as entries in an encrypted database, referenced by codes instead of names, reduced to specifications on a buyer's request form. Those were the ones who kept him riding. He walked into the community center on a Tuesday afternoon. The club had helped rebuild it, not with money from club business, separate, clean, just as Rooster had demanded. The center sat in a neighborhood in San Bernardino that most people drove through without stopping. After-school programs now ran 5 days a week. Homework help, self-defense classes, art projects, a reading corner with donated books stacked 3 shelves high. Kids everywhere, laughing, arguing, chasing each other through the hallways with the reckless energy that children have when they feel safe enough to be loud. A blur of blonde hair came streaking across the room. "Mr. Garrett!" Lily Dawson hit him at waist level, full speed, both arms wrapping around him with the kind of force that a 6-year-old generates when she's been waiting all week for this moment. She was taller now, 6 years old, missing a front tooth. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a ponytail that was already falling apart. She was wearing purple sneakers, not butterflies this time, but stars. She was grinning up at him with a gap-toothed smile that could have powered every light in the building. "Hi, Mr. Garrett." "Hey, kid, how's the tooth?" She grinned wider, showing the gap like a trophy. "Tooth Fairy gave me $5. $5? I got a quarter." "That's because you're old." Garrett laughed, a real laugh, the kind that came from his chest and surprised him every single time because for 24 years he'd forgotten that sound existed inside him. It still felt new. It still felt borrowed, like something he'd picked up and wasn't sure he was allowed to keep. Karen Dawson watched from across the room. She came every Tuesday, brought Lily, stayed for the whole session. She volunteered sometimes, organizing books, helping with homework, making sure the snack table didn't descend into chaos. She and Garrett never talked much. They didn't need to. But every Tuesday when Lily ran across the room and hit Garrett like a small, enthusiastic cannonball, Karen would catch Garrett's eye from across the room and mouth 2 words. "Thank you." Every Tuesday, the same 2 words. And every Tuesday they hit Garrett the same way, like something he didn't deserve but couldn't refuse. Maya Torres was there too. She came with her grandmother, Elena, who was 71 years old, walked with a cane, and carried herself with the bearing of a woman who had survived enough to stop being afraid of anything. Elena watched her granddaughter the way a hawk watches the sky, constant, alert, and with a fierceness that dared the world to try something. Maya didn't laugh like Lily. She didn't run. She didn't throw herself at people. She sat in the corner with a book, always a book, her dark eyes scanning the room between pages. She watched everything. She watched everyone. She was 8 going on 45, and she carried herself with a gravity that made adults uncomfortable because it reminded them of what she'd survived. But last Tuesday, something happened. Maya had walked up to Garrett, straight-backed, chin up, her eyes locked on his with that same fierce, unblinking gaze he'd first seen in the warehouse. She'd held out a folded piece of paper, placed it in his hand, and walked away without a single word. He'd unfolded it later, sitting on his Harley in the parking lot, a crayon drawing. On the left, a tall figure in a black jacket. On the right, a smaller figure with dark hair. They were standing side by side, not holding hands. Maya wouldn't draw that, he knew. She wasn't there yet. Maybe she never would be. But they were standing together, close enough to matter. Above them, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, 5 words. The man who didn't lie. Garrett kept it in his cut, over his heart, folded once. He carried it every day the way some men carry photographs of their children, because in a way, that's exactly what it was. His phone rang. He stepped away from Lily, held up one finger. 1 second, kid, and answered. Mr. Mercer? A woman's voice, tight, controlled. The voice of someone holding themselves together through pure will. My name is Sandra Chen. Detective Lockhart gave me your number. She said you help people like me. What's happening, Mrs. Chen? My son Tyler, he's 7. He didn't come home from school today. He walks home. It's 4 blocks. He's done it 100 times. His teacher said he left at 3:15. It's 6:30 now and he's not here. The police say they need more time. They say he probably went to a friend's house. But I know my son, Mr. Mercer. I know him. He would call. He would always call. Something is wrong. I can feel it. Garrett was already moving, already walking toward the door, already reaching for his keys. Tell me everything, Mrs. Chen. Start with this morning. He listened as he walked. Sandra Chen's voice poured through the phone. Details, observations, the 1,000 small facts that a mother carries about her child without even knowing she's carrying them. Tyler's route home, his favorite shortcut, the friends he might visit, the jacket he was wearing, the backpack with the dinosaur patch his grandmother sewed on. Garrett pushed through the front door, texted Grizz one-handed while Sandra Chen was still talking. Saddle up, we ride, missing kid, 7 years old, San Bernardino. Before he reached his bike, his phone buzzed. Grizz, on it, 15 minutes. Then Deacon, rolling. Forge, where? Rattler, say when. Pixel, already pulling school surveillance. Send me the address. 3 minutes later, engines roared to life across San Bernardino. Not 1, not 2. 7 Harley-Davidsons firing up in garages, in driveways, in parking lots. A chain reaction of thunder that rolled through the streets and bounced off buildings and echoed down alleys. For most people, that sound meant nothing. Bikers, noise, the kind of men you cross the street to avoid. But for the people who knew, for the parents who'd made the call, for the families who'd gotten their children back, for a 16-year-old girl in a GED classroom, for a father in Victorville whose daughter smiled again, for a teacher in Riverside who could finally sleep, for a 71-year-old grandmother who held her granddaughter and said, God sent you. That sound meant something different. It meant someone was coming. Garrett rode at the front, wind against his face, open road ahead. Behind him, his brothers in formation, tight, steady, silent. Men who'd chosen to ride not for money or power or territory or pride, but for other people's children. For Tyler Chen, 7 years old, who didn't come home from school. For every child who didn't come home. He thought about Lily's words, the ones she'd said at the gas station 6 months ago, the ones that started everything, the ones he heard every single morning when he opened his eyes. Just for today, be my dad. He hadn't pretended. That was the thing that nobody understood. Not the club, not Lockhart, not even Grizz. When he'd held Lily's hand and put himself between her and a predator, he wasn't playing a role. He wasn't acting. He was being exactly what he was. A man who saw a child in danger and refused to look away. Redemption doesn't erase the past. He knew that. His record still existed. His sins still counted. The things he'd done in 24 years of outlaw life didn't vanish because he'd found something worth fighting for. The scars on his hands didn't disappear. The sealed door inside his chest didn't magically open all the way. But maybe redemption wasn't about erasing. Maybe it was about choosing. Every day, every call, every time a voice on the phone said, "My child is missing," you choose. You choose to ride. You choose to answer. You choose to be the man that a 5-year-old girl believed you were when she grabbed your hand at a gas station and whispered 5 words that changed everything. The highway stretched ahead. The engines thundered. 7 men rode toward a 7-year-old boy who needed someone to come for him. And somewhere behind them, in a community center in San Bernardino, Lily Dawson stood at the window and watched the motorcycles disappear down the road. She pressed her hand flat against the glass. Karen put her arm around her daughter's shoulder. "Where's Mr. Garrett going, Mommy?" Karen looked at the fading shapes on the highway. She heard the engines growing distant. She thought about a gas station, a phone call, a voice that said, "Your daughter is safe." "He's going to help someone, baby." Lily nodded. Like that made perfect sense. Like that was exactly what Mr. Garrett was supposed to do. "He'll come back," Lily said. Not a question, a fact. The unshakable certainty of a child who had decided 6 months ago at a truck stop off Interstate 40 that this man was safe, that this man was good, that this man would always come back. "Yeah, baby," Karen said. "He'll come back." The engines faded. The road went quiet. The sun dropped toward the horizon, painting everything gold. And out on the highway, Garrett Mercer rode toward a boy named Tyler, carrying a crayon drawing over his heart and a promise he made to a 5-year-old girl. A promise he intended to keep every single day for the rest of his life. Someone is always coming. That was the promise. That was the line. And Garrett Iron Mercer, patched Hell's Angel, chapter enforcer, the man mothers warn their children about, was the one who answered. Every single time.